While the man realizes that Russel's desperate struggle just changed the fate of Endymion and Kiel, Hubert and the others go to help him up. Now nobody can doubt his abilities, and it's truly the birth of a hero. 10 days after that incident, Russel is yet to fully recover. Despite the fact that he used overload and his wizard body, it's clear that the wall to becoming superhuman is quite formidable. If Sir Nicolo hadn't arrived in time, he surely would have died. He had thought he'd gotten stronger, but it looks like he still has a long way to go. However, he can't seem to forget how the Dragon King told him to find the dragons, because their existence will connect him to him, and it doesn't make any sense to him either. Dragons are known to be extinct though, so this brings up the question of whether there are any living dragons left. Sometime later, while he chats with Hubert, he tells him about how Hughes had speculated that it's not the Empire that was responsible for his father's death. Hubert suspects that he might have simply said that to provoke him, but it would be wise to be careful regardless while they secretly investigate it through the Flame Tower. After they end that discussion, Hubert informs him that the Master was very worried, and he's glad to see that he's okay. Before he leaves, he hands Russel an invitation to the royal banquet. Sometime later, at the banquet, Russel realizes he's not so used to formal suits and suspects that it may be because he always wears robes. While he's deep in thought, Master Daria approaches him and expresses how glad she is to see he's healthy. She commends that he's done great things, and there's nothing more gratifying to see as his teacher and the master of the Flame Tower. While they talk, a man named Jillian approaches Master Daria, and she's surprised to see him at the banquet. Jillian retorts that he couldn't resist seeing the rumored divinity. However, Russel recognizes him and confirms that he's Sir Jillian Pearlson. Jillian Pearlson is a weapon master and a superhuman aura practitioner who can handle 18 types of weapons, and he's surprised to think that such a strong individual would come to see him. Jillian jokes that he heard that he gave Hughes a hard time, but Russel confesses that he was merely lucky. Jillian, on the other hand, believes that luck only favors the skilled, and he commends him for doing a great job by killing that bastard because Hughes and his disciples are scum. Suddenly, Jillian feels his muscles and says they're well developed. He asks Russel if he's also practicing his spear skills too, but our boy says he's still at the stage of repeating basic spear techniques. Jillian replies that the basics are important, but he needs appropriate training to surpass his limits. He hands him a ring and asks him to bring that ring and find him if he ever needs guidance. His hospitality shocks Russel, and he asks why he's showing him such grace. But Jillian corrects that it's not grace, but he's giving extra fertilizer to a promising tree. The gesture touches Russel deeply, and he promises to reach out to him. Shortly after, an announcement is made that the ruler of Endymion, His Majesty the King, has entered the hall. Everyone bows down to the king, who is accompanied by Princess Hecate. As they walk past the guests, Hecate spots Russel and smiles at him, making our tough guide blush like a fifth grader. When the king ascends the stage, Brother Hubert and Russel come to kneel in front of him, and the king acknowledges the great contributions Russel has made to the alliance with Kiel and their recent victory. The king grants Hubert 500 gold coins, 100 fine horses, and the right to collect taxes from 1,000 households in the southern part of the kingdom, and he grants Russel 3,000 gold coins, and designates 3 cities in the west of the kingdom as the Raymond County, and places them under his authority, which shocks Russel. He's soon given a document that contains the names and locations of the 3 cities included in the county, and Russel receives it with honor, happy to finally own his own land, which brings him a step closer to restoring his family. After giving out the rewards, they resume the banquet to celebrate the great victory. While they're all having a good time, Princess Hecate's attendant notices she's not pleased, and Hecate points to Russel, who is being thronged by a group of women. The princess's attendant notices the thronging and proposes that the princess ask him for a dance, but Hecate says she'll wait for now. She says it's popularly said that one mustn't be aggressive when it comes to younger men, and quietly waiting is the virtue of an older woman. But her attendant wonders where she learned that from. Suddenly, Russel apologizes to the flock of ladies around him and walks towards the princess, then asks to dance with her. When he does, Hecate turns to her attendant and reminds her that she was right after all. While they dance, Princess Hecate brings up the fact that he seems to have a question to ask her, so he mentions how she had said that she would watch over him some time ago, and asks why she said that. She replies that it's because he's exceptionally capable for his age and several other reasons, but the major reason is because his face is quite to her liking. Her words startle Russel, and he asks her what she means, but she grabs his waist to continue dancing, stating that a woman doesn't say such things to a man she has no interest in, especially because she's not that kind of person. She informs him that she's not asking for an answer right away, but she hopes that his answer will be positive. Later that night, Russel goes outside to think. He had known about her personality, but he didn't expect her to say those words directly to his face. Hecate Rathmos is the king's only descendant and the person closest to the throne. Accepting her feelings would be the right choice to make for the sake of his family, but he's not sure about his own feelings yet. While he's thinking, he's suddenly approached by Sir Alan, who apologizes for interrupting him but informs him that he's come to propose that they end their wager. When he gets back to the tower, it turns out that Master Melville had sent in a letter to Master Daria, proposing to end the wager. After Russell agreed with Alan to end the wager, he had expected Alan to get in touch, but this was much sooner than he expected. When Master Daria asks him what he thinks, he mentions that they don't need the initial 3 years that were stipulated in the initial bet, so they decide to go along with them. Sometime after, they all gather in the dueling arena in the Colosseum, with a magical barrier that can withstand not just 6th circle magic, but also the sword aura of an expert-level swordsman. Our boy considers how he was a 2nd circle mage in his past life, and how he would never have thought he'd be standing here someday. Master Daria declares that they should start right away because there's no need to drag it out, and Master Melville jokingly wonders how long she can keep up her bravado. The barrier is a magical barrier created by the 2 tower masters, so they don't have to worry about destroying their surroundings, and have the liberty to show their skill to their heart's content. In the dueling area, Russell and Alan face each other. Alan is a genius known as the mage among mages, but as of this moment, there's little difference in their skills. Russell reasons that the crucial thing in a match between similar opponents is closing the distance between them. He quickly dashes forward, causing Alan to dart backward in an effort to create distance. Russell's fighting style seems to him like he's fighting a knight or a swordsman rather than a mage, because he seems to be confident in his firepower and resilience. Truly, the Flame Tower's instantaneous firepower is stronger than the Blue Tower's, but Alan quickly reacts with an icicle rain. As the icicles head toward Russell, he realizes that he had not expected less of Sir Alan, who's known to have unbelievable casting speed. However, our boy quickly responds with a fire rain to negate his attack. While the masters watch, Melville is impressed that Russell could quickly copy Alan's formula in an instant. After the smoke clears up in the arena, our boy decides to strike first, this time with another powerful attack called the Fire Lightning. The Fire Lightning almost hits Alan, but he quickly uses Blink and teleports out of the way, thwarting Russell's plan to cover the distance between them. To be able to close the distance, Russell decides that he needs to stop his opponent's legs, so he quickly creates an earthquake before Alan can respond, and it catches Sir Alan off guard. Russell's plan is to make him find it hard to keep creating distance by driving him to a corner using these explosive earthquakes. Suddenly, Sir Alan casts a spell called Ice Age, and the entire arena ground freezes over, stopping the earthquakes that had been shaking the ground. It amuses Russell, but Alan realizes he's a total monster. He soon tells Russell that it's time to put an end to probing each other and summons another ice rain upon where Russell is standing. But our boy quickly creates a firewall to protect himself. Suddenly, Russell's hands freeze, preventing him from moving properly and casting his firewall. Alan had used a move called Frost Stomp, which is a secret magic of the Blue Tower that Master Melville had taught him since he's going to be his successor. Alan commends Russell's astonishing growth, which he'd like to observe more, but explains that his master is waiting, so he has to postpone that. Using a method called Aqua Field, he floods the entire arena with water, and the waves of water overflow toward Russell to cover him up. Upon seeing the incoming flood, he decides to use an ace up his sleeve that he didn't plan to use before. Suddenly, Russell triggers an explosion, releasing a violent crimson energy that stops Alan from moving his body. Master Daria recognizes the method as something called Dragon Fear, and Master Melville suddenly realizes that the reason he had exceptional talent for his age is that he inherited a dragon's bloodline. On the spot, Russell's body transforms into a merge of a human and dragon body. Daria is shocked and believes this is impossible because she's certain that his parents were ordinary humans, which can only mean one thing. Master Melville speculates that this means there must be a high-ranking dragon among the ancestors of the Raymond family. On the arena, Alan notes that the power Russell has just released is enough to make his whole body tremble. However, Russell is not the only one hiding his power. He also has something up his sleeves. Alan suddenly casts a wide area spell, which can freeze an entire legion at the level he's casting. Our boy quickly casts the Gay Bulg Overwrap Spear and combines 6 of them for more power. His plan is to win by breaking through Alan's magic. Meanwhile, Alan decides to finish the fight immediately, and he releases a sea of cold energy that alarms Russell because it's so cold that it could freeze not only mana, but even time itself. However, he manages to tear through it with his weapon, and he also recognizes that it would have been tough to do that had it not been for his battle experience with McCrae Hughes. The fact that he could break through it surprises Alan, and Russell jumps towards him to land an attack. He's moving so fast that Alan realizes there's no time for him to use Blink, so he has to block. Before Alan can react, he gets hit by Russell's spear and falls to the ground, while Russell holds the spear to his face while standing over him. At that point, Alan smiles and he realizes that he's lost. Suddenly the system announces that the mission has been accomplished, and Russel will receive a highest grade mana stone as well as a relic from the era of the gods. Master Daria soon walks towards Melville and asks the old man if he has prepared the relic from the era of the gods, and the old man admits defeat. As the tower master of the Blue Tower, he can't break his promise, so he opens his compartment to provide the relic from the era of the gods, and it surprises Daria that he's actually giving it up. On their way back home, Russel examines the relic that was handed over to him. It's the Sewing Things of Arachne, a relic from the era of gods that mimics the goddess Arachne's ability to cut and connect space. The dagger can cut through space, and in addition, if you imbue mana into the chain connecting the dagger and the needle to sew space, you can join the visible space with the space cut by the dagger. Even the mere cutting of space is extraordinary. But to be able to combine them too is something that could be very useful for ambushes or defense. Shortly after, the rider informs him that they've arrived at the Autumn Moon Castle. When he enters, he soon meets Sir Gillian, whom he thanks for inviting him over. Apparently, the news of him beating Sir Alan has spread to the weapon master's ears, but Russel claims that he was just lucky. Russel soon learns that the place they're standing in is Gillian's office, and he was unsure of that because it's filled with weapons and looks like a training room. Gillian confesses that it wasn't like this in the beginning, but the weapons continued to pile up over time as he continued to train. Since Russel had told him he uses a spear, Gillian hands him one of the spears and proposes to know his level accurately so he can guide him properly. It's a really great opportunity for Russel to receive guidance from a weapon master, and he can use this opportunity to improve his spearmanship, which will serve as great help for future battles. Once they begin their spar, Sir Gillian decides to let him have the first move, which is an offer too irresistible for Russel to turn down. He charges at Sir Gillian, but he soon ends up on his back. On the ground, he's surprised that he got defeated so easily even though he didn't use magic, and that shows the strength of a weapon master. When he asks how he performed, Gillian replies that his visual acuity and flexible thinking are good, but he doesn't seem to have a talent for wielding the spear. However, it's still impressive considering the fact that he's self-taught. Gillian finds Russel amusing to watch, but Russel wonders if he should use magic in their next spar. Suddenly, Gillian informs him that he won't be teaching him for free, but he'll be training him once a week, and he'll spar with his knights in return. Sparring with Gillian's knights is not a bad offer, but just sparring won't make them even, so Russel makes a request. Meanwhile, all the knights are summoned by Gillian to meet with Russel. When they hear Russel is around, one of them speculates that Russel is the mage that blew off McCrae Hughes' arm, and is said to have horns on his head and breathe fire. One other knight considers that nonsense because that sounds like a circus guy. But Lord Gillian soon arrives with Russel, so they all greet him in unison. Immediately, Gillian announces to the knights that they'll have 2 sparring matches with Russel starting today. In the first match, they'll be using magic and aura, but they won't in the second. The knights are surprised to hear that they'll be fighting without aura and magic in the second round, because that will be disadvantageous to Russel, who is a mage. However, the goal of this training is to improve skills rather than experience, and not using magic is better for that. Based on that, Russel introduces himself to the knights and informs them that he looks forward to their guidance before they start sparring. Suddenly, the system displays that the next mission is to spar with the Knights of the Autumn Moon Castle, defeat the knights, and achieve consecutive victories by sparring, with rewards of low-grade manas. Shortly after, Russel is paired with one of the knights named Rohakan, a 4th-grade knight, who expresses that it's an honor to cross swords with a famous hero like Russel. They soon begin, and Rohakan dashes toward Russel with a perfect form that seems straight out of a swordsmanship manual, which Russel doesn't expect from a 4th-grade knight. Regardless, such skill is expected from a knight trained by Sir Gillian, but Russel easily dodges his attack and knocks him on his back. After he points the spear at him, Russel asks if he would like to continue, but Rohakan accepts his defeat. Meanwhile, the other knights are impressed by how Russel moved and realize that he actually has some skill outside his use of magic. The knights soon become tense, as it's natural for their pride to be hurt after losing to a mage in a fight of pure martial skill. The request that Russel had privately made with Gillian was for him to be allowed to spar with them without using magic, and Gillian had accepted the proposal purely out of amusement. However, it seems to have turned out to be a great motivator for everyone. Suddenly, another knight named Sir Vincent, a 2nd-grade knight, asks to spar with Russel, and some of the other knights wonder if he thinks that 3rd grades can't handle Sir Russel. Sir Vincent is a 2nd-grade knight strong enough to compare to the vice-captain of the Knight Order, and Russel thanks him for the opportunity to fight with him, as it will be a great opportunity. Later that evening, Gillian realizes he had underestimated Russel when he finally managed to draw against Vincent, but Russel claims he just got lucky, as usual. Gillian, however, doesn't buy his luck story and asks if Vincent would have stood a chance if he had used magic back there. When Russel doesn't answer, it proves Gillian's point that Vincent still wouldn't have stood a chance, even if he were a first-grade knight. Jillian isn't wrong because Russell is a 5th circle mage, which puts him on the same level as an expert-grade knight. Jillian cautions him not to sell himself short. As they say, excessive humility can become arrogance. Shortly after, Jillian opens a vault to show Russell a gift he has for him. Inside the vault are books that Sir Jillian collected while traveling all over the continent in his younger days, including spearmanship books that Russell can use to study. Since it will take too long to check all the books in the library, Russell decides to focus his attention on spearmanship. Later on, Jillian finds out that Russell is unable to choose between 2 spearmanship books, called the 6 Union Heaven-Shattering Arts and La Mancha, and informs him that they're both great books to master. Apparently, the 6 Union Heaven-Shattering Arts is difficult to master, but if perfected, it can become the best among the powerful spear techniques. La Mancha, on the other hand, is a refined spear technique, so being able to use it without unnecessary movements is a positive. Personally, Sir Jillian recommends the 6 Union Heaven-Shattering Arts, but Russell decides to go with La Mancha. The reason he chose it is that a refined spear technique that can be used flexibly depending on the situation is more suitable for him as a mage than a powerful spear technique. Jillian notices that he picked the rational choice over something that's just strong, which shows that he thinks like a mage. He decides to respect his decision and informs him to go ahead with mastering La Mancha. It intrigues Russell that Jillian would give away such books without a thought, and it resonates with him how generous Sir Jillian is. Suddenly, Jillian reminds him not to forget that he has to spar with the knights, so he's reminded that it's not free after all. Sometime later, while Russell is being transported in a coach, he practices the sequence of the La Mancha movement. The simple moves come together to form a line, but he keeps getting stuck at one point. It's been a year and a half since he received La Mancha from Sir Jillian, and just memorizing the forms is already an achievement in itself. But to perfect the spear technique requires him to realize its true meaning. For that, complete focus would be ideal, but he has too many distractions. One thing on his plate right now is the system notification of the mission to become a 6th circle mage. By surpassing the new wall he has faced and becoming a full-fledged 6th circle mage, with rewards of highest, advanced, intermediate, and low-grade mana stones, as well as an unknown reward. Becoming a 6th circle mage is a matter of training and enlightenment, and there's no immediate solution to it. The words of the Dragon King fill his mind because the king had told him to find the dragons, as their existence will connect Russell to him and help him become the master and hope of the dragons that remain in this world. He has no inkling as to how he's supposed to find the traces of the dragons. He had checked out the old books and found 4 places where he could find the traces of dragons. So far he's checked 2 of them, but to no avail. That leaves the Red Mountain Belt Canyon and Coral Island. Coral Island seems to be more likely out of the 2, but exploring it at his current level is too dangerous. He decides to postpone exploring Coral Island until after he becomes a 6th circle, and head to the Red Mountain Belt Canyon for now to explore the underworld within its depths. In a private discussion with Master Daria, she learns that he's going to the underworld this time. The underworld is a land of dwarves, and humans can't enter that place easily. Russell agrees, so the master tells him to visit the White Magic Tower Master if he must go because she's half-blood of the fairy race, and must know something that can help him. Later that night, Russell heads over to the White Tower. Apparently dwarves are a part of the fairy race, so Master Daria had a point. As he approaches the tower, he's suddenly ambushed by someone that Master Daria had forgotten to inform him would be there. Brother Olsen. Olsen wraps his hands around his neck and mentions that it's been a while. Apparently Olsen had applied to the overseas research trip in the underworld too. He had thought it'd be lonely since it's not a popular research location, but it seems he won't be bored with Russell around. When Russell asks him if he's met the White Tower Master before, Olsen admits to having met her and describes her as someone who is like a cute yet eccentric girl. Shortly after, they're led into the tower, and Russell is intrigued by the cuteness of the room. When they step into the main hall, they are welcomed by a young woman hugging a teddy bear. Olsen quickly bows, but Russell stares incredulously, while the White Tower Master recognizes both of them. Her name is Amelia Merwin, and she's the White Tower Master. The White Tower Master is one who can control wind and spirits. Possibly because she's also half human and half elf, she also gives off pure mana, which can only be felt from elves. Brother Olsen is amazed that she remembers their names and concludes that it's because of Russell's fame. But Master Amelia comments that it's because of the peculiar mana that Russell possesses. She floats towards him and sniffs him, detecting that he's made a contract with a spirit. Russell gladly affirms that, especially because nobody else has noticed that before. The master asks him if he can summon the spirit he's in contract with because he can't go to the underworld using normal means. He'd have to either be lucky enough to find a hidden portal, find a map with a portal marked on it, or have an artifact that finds a portal. Since they don't have any of those 3 things, they need a spirit to go there. Suddenly Russell summons Pepper, and Amelia fawns over how cute he is. She also notes that he's an intermediate great spirit and a mutant. Meanwhile, Archduke Bismarck is engaged by someone speaking through the enchanted skull named Karen, who states that he's come because it's the day of the contract. Apparently, Karen had to come because Hypnos, the person who the Archduke is in contract with, is busy. The Archduke is surprised that the 5-year contract has already elapsed, and he's soon given an apple he's supposed to eat at the end of that period. After the Archduke eats the apple, he's suddenly engulfed by some magical power. He reasons that repeating this deal could help him become immortal, but that won't be possible because of its side effects. After he eats it, he informs Karen that Daria's disciple has gone to the Red Canyon. But Karen replies that he knows, especially if it's information about that wretched woman. Charon detects that the Archduke is worried about the Red Canyon's border with the Amazonian forest, which he believes Russell will interfere with, especially with the situation with Blaine. However, Karen clarifies that their secret operation is being carried out deep in the forest, far from the canyon, which makes it impossible for them to find, unless they came specifically looking for it. Suddenly, Karen abruptly leaves, stating that there are other people waiting besides the Archduke. The insolence of the lowly cultist annoys the Archduke, and he plans to deal with him once he ascends the throne. Suddenly, he notices that his treasured plant has withered, realizing that he has to hurry things up. The next morning, in a carriage, Amelia thanks Russell for making it easier for them to find the underworld, because they should be able to track the presence of the Earth Spirit, Gnome, and find their way to the underworld with Pepper's help. Shortly after, they arrive at the Red Canyon. Even from a distance, Russell is able to feel a mysterious power emanating from the rocks, and he hopes that he might be able to find clues about dragons in this place. Olsen suggests that they head straight to the canyon without wasting time in the city, to which Russell agrees. Soon after, they alight, and Pepper is released to track down Gnome's scent. When Pepper reaches a great height, he's soon ambushed by one-horned eagles. When Olsen tries to handle them, Russell stops him because Pepper had said not to. Suddenly, Pepper releases fire that burns the eagles and rejoices after. Shortly after, he senses Gnome's presence and leads the men there. The place seems to be filled with over 300 caves at a glance, and it might take up all their time to research it, and they still won't get to the underworld. But Pepper leads them to one specific cave. When they step in, they notice that it's not an ordinary cave because there's no humidity or stalactites to be found, which are characteristics of caves, making it seem like an artificial cave. It's almost as if an artificial cave was made to hide the entrance, which could also mean there are traps there. But they decide to go in anyway to see what the dwarves have set up. Not long after, they can't count the number of traps they've successfully evaded, and they seem to be on their 15th so far. Russell had thought he could easily dismantle the traps with magic, but he didn't expect there to be mana control devices throughout the entire cave, stopping him from using mana and making it necessary to use draconification. As he's about to activate it, he faintly senses some mana, while Olsen urges him to run away. Our boy realizes that the mana control devices weren't installed in that specific spot, and he quickly activates his Blaze Lance and uses La Mancha. The only reason they wouldn't install mana control devices in a single spot would be because it's the warp gate leading to the underworld, and Russell tears through the wall using his Blaze Lance, unearthing the hidden warp gate. No matter how advanced the dwarves' technology is, crossing space is impossible without mana, and that's why there are no mana control devices where the warp gate is. His find impresses Olsen, and they both walk through the gate. After walking in, they reach the underworld, which Russell had expected would be small since it's an underground city, but it looks as big as Endymion's royal capital. When they go down some stairs, they're soon approached by some dwarves who mention that it's been a long time since humans have come here because it's not easy to find the warp gate. One of them asks if they got their hands on a tribe's map, or if they're spirit contractors, but they decide to consider them as their guests regardless. The dwarves signal to them to follow if they're going into the city so they can show them around, because the underworld is much more interesting inside. Russell watches the dwarves incredulously since he's never seen them before. During their tour, the dwarves explain that the luminous stones embedded in the ceiling were put there over 100 years ago, and they still shine like stars. When they show him several other cool things, Russell feels like they're bragging more than showing him the way. Suddenly, Olsen approaches Russell and reminds him that their research goals are different even though they came together. When Russell agrees, Olsen runs after the dark dwarf and proposes that they meet back on the spot in 3 weeks' time. He doesn't listen to Russell, who protests to come with him, until he's dragged away by the other dwarf, Miggy, who mentions that he still has a lot to show him. While on his tour, Russell notices the statue of a red dragon. He recalls the legend that says that the underworld was blessed by 2 dragons, which Miggy affirms. Apparently, the silver dragon who governs iron and wind bestowed those who reside in the underworld with the blessing of steel. while the fire dragon who governs fire bestowed them with the blessing of flame. The place with the statue was built when the fire dragon bestowed them with the blessing of flames, and history says that the dragon even occasionally stayed there a few thousand years ago. Upon hearing that, Russel considers that there may still be some traces if a dragon stayed there. He quickly asks Miggy if outsiders can enter the altar, so Miggy decides to take him inside. While they head towards the altar, Miggy explains that the weapons sold in the underworld are much better than those sold in ordinary smithies. As such, there are more races aside from dwarves in the underworld, especially from the Amazon forest's fairy race, who come to trade or to get equipment. While they're walking, Russel is surprised to be approached by Lady Ilo, who is glad to meet him again. Soon after, an elder of the White Ash Tree tribe, Ilo's tribe, introduces himself as Scan, acknowledging Russel as the one who helped Ilo, so they exchange pleasantries. Scan was curious as to what person helped Ilo, and he senses an aura that's like a living volcano coming from Russel, and is surprised that a human can possess such pure mana. Russel soon learns that Ilo had come to the underworld to buy weapons. It's odd to hear that a peace-loving elf would buy weapons, so Russel asks her if something happened to her tribe. True to his suspicions, it turns out that the monsters in the Amazon forest have become barbaric. Ilo laments that this wouldn't have happened if her blood had awakened, but Scan comforts her that it's not her fault. Back in the past, Ilo had informed Russel that she had the blood of the green dragon, and that makes him wonder if the White Ash Tree tribe has any records or legends related to dragons. However, she confirms that she knows nothing about that apart from inheriting a dragon's blood, but she promises to check for any records from her tribe if she can find any while he's staying in the underworld. Shortly after, they reach the fire dragon's altar, but Russel doesn't see anything special. He considers going to the silver dragon's altar, but soon finds out that the silver dragon's altar is the same as the fire dragon's altar in location and form. While he considers if there's really nothing to be seen here, Miggy steps out to wait for him while he checks it out. Suddenly, Russel places a hand on the statue, and a green light appears, eventually lighting up the silver statue's eyes. Suddenly the silver dragon states that he's been waiting for a very long time, and is glad that he's finally come before the end of his remaining lifespan. As the green light shines brighter, the dragon tells him to follow the path and come to him so he can show him their master, the genesis of all dragons. Suddenly a green compass with an arrow appears over his hands, and the voice of the dragon asks him to go in haste. Our boy quickly dashes in that direction, especially because the voice speaking to him sounds like a voice on the brink of death. While he's running, he notices the arrow is getting shorter, which means he's getting closer to the dragon that led him. Shortly after, he flies into the sky and spots the place the compass is leading him to. As he approaches the place, the house seems to be too small to house a dragon, and it seems to be some sort of cover to hide the passage. When he enters, he notices a gate inside, which confirms his suspicions. Upon approaching the gate, a voice welcomes him as the future master of all dragons. Suddenly, the large gate swings open, unveiling the actual silver dragon, Sylvator, who greets him. Sylvator explains that he would like to talk to him as much as possible, but doesn't have much time left. Russel wonders what he means by that, and Sylvator explains that his body and spirit have aged, and it is almost time for his eternal rest. While Russel wonders if Sylvator is able to face death so calmly, because their race lives for 10,000 years, Sylvator proceeds to return the power bestowed upon him to Russel, and gives him a silver horn. The power is being transferred from the previous master, Sylvator, to the new master. When Russel receives the horn, the system notifies him that he has inherited a new power from the silver dragon with the divine dragon king's horn, wind essence. He had first gotten fire and lightning, and now it's a horn with the power of wind. Oddly, this time it's tagged the divine dragon king's horn, and not the forgotten king's horn. When Sylvator asks why the young master is delaying the succession of power, Russel explains that he's doing so because the power of the horn so far has increased his understanding of the respective elements of his mana, which means it would be more efficient for him to become a 6th circle mage first, and then use the power. It intrigues Sylvator that he's able to stay calm in the sight of such power, and he chuckles that Russel is a master worthy of waiting 10,000 years for. After Sylvator prays that all his wishes come true, he suddenly begins to fade away but states that his mission does not end here, even though his body and spirit will disappear. Apparently, Sylvator will leave his power to the child who carries his bloodline. Meanwhile, somewhere else in the underworld, Lady Ilo is suddenly struck by a great surge of power that the late Sylvator left behind. In the cave, Russel walks out dejected because he had many questions to ask, and he had just lost his first ever lead when it was right in front of his eyes. As he heads out, he suddenly runs into Ilo, who unveils her head to show 2 horns and a bright light. When Russel asks her what's on her head, she kneels and refers to him as the Dragon Lord, but shortly collapses before she can complete her sentence. Russel quickly rushes to her side to help and later takes her away to be treated. While he's by her side, he's surprised to learn that Elo is the successor of the Silver Dragon. However, it doesn't look like her dragon powers have fully awakened yet. Suddenly she wakes up and refers to him like she always does. Suddenly, the system notifies Russel that Elo has begun to awaken as a second-generation dragon, but has not yet realized her mission. When she becomes aware of her mission, she will have to decide for herself if she will awaken as a divine dragon or remain as an elf. The message is a bit of a relief to Russel because if she were forced to awaken as a divine dragon, she would have been bound to him as the Dragon Lord,